Black Politics Today. An eye for what's at stake in global politics and your source for the social, economic, and political impact of public policy on the African American community. Your host, Kelly Michael Williams, is a political strategy veteran with an undefeated campaign record and the political experience that spans nearly 3 decades, from Mayor Willie Brown in California to President Barack Obama in our nation's capital. So get ready for a fresh and honest approach on the politics that affect you and your family the most. Now, your host, Kelly Michael Williams.
Well. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Kelly Michael Williams. And as we get ready to get started tonight, we're going to have an interesting show tonight. I am excited to have my brother back again, once again, for another broadcast right here of What's at Stake on Black Politics Today. As you know, each and every week we try to do what we can to make sure we try to highlight some of the major issues that are going on affecting Black folks in America. And this week is no different. I know I'm supposed to be on sabbatical, but just some stuff, as you guys know, hit the fan this week. And I'm a little under the weather, but I was like, I had to do this show tonight. And I was so glad that I was able to get my boy to come and join me tonight to do this, because I really think that we need to address this issue, and we have to keep addressing the issue until something else happens. And until, as my father used to say, until the stuff that's happening, although he didn't say stuff, stops happening. And that's what we have to do. And that's the place that we have to go to, because clearly this is getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand. And I don't know what else to do about it except talk about it. And, we go to therapists to deal with our issues, so we talk about them. So think of this as your therapy session for this week. Okay, we're going to talk about it. I want you to call in at 516-590-0143, 516-590-0143, or hit us up on Facebook or YouTube in our chat, and we'll get your comments and take your comments from there and do that. But if we think back to history during slavery, when slaves attempted to leave or escape or, go out for their freedom, there was a group of men that would chase after them and basically get paid for a bounty for capturing them. And this group is known as a slave patrol. It was that version of bounty hunters, police. It was, their version at the time of the bounty hunters, police, FBI, CIA, whatever you want to call it. And they were just a bunch of vigilantes that were going out there and getting the victims, the slaves, and, bringing them back to the master. And in some cases, they would beat them as they did it and bring them back. And then other times, they brought them back dead or alive. It just depends. But they still got paid. And it's with that backdrop that we have to understand that that's where our current police system evolved from. They did what they did with impunity. They never got in trouble for it. They never got arrested for it. They never got killed for it. And if you think about the police brutality that we have suffered for generations, for decades, for centuries, it has always been told to us that the police were always right. It was always told to us that, I used to always say this: why would an unarmed perpetrator reach into his waistband for nothing that is there, only to get shot by the police because they tell you, hands up, don't move, and you're going to move and motion to like you're going to go to a waistband, and you have nothing there, and you get shot? That was the line, if you think back, that was the line that every police officer used for centuries, for decades. He was reaching for his waistband. I was in fear for my life. He was reaching for his waistband. I was in fear for my life. Now that we have videos and they have body cams and things of that nature, they don't even try to say they were in fear for their life. Now it's he was resisting arrest. They've changed the narrative to he was a resisting arrest. Now, it does not matter in any case unless unless there is a threat against that officer's life. Can he use deadly force, or can he use any force that would ultimately end up in death. No force can he use that could ultimately end up in death once he's gotten the individual under control. But that's not what's happening. And so this past week, we found that out even more egregious than George Floyd, in my opinion. George Floyd was egregious because Derek Chauvin sat there on his neck for 9 minutes and gave no regard for his life. But what happened in Louisiana 2 years ago, and we're just finding out about it this week or last week, 2 years ago, was just absolutely despicable. They beat this man so bad, bruises on his face, everything, cuts everywhere, to the point where they were saying they hope he didn't have AIDS because there was so much blood that got on their uniform. Now, the man wasn't bloody when they stopped him. The man wasn't bloody when he was initially brought out of the car. So how did so much blood get on them that they were concerned about him having AIDS? Because they beat that man's behind. They tased him, they beat him, and they basically whooped his ass until he was dead. And then they left him there in, quote unquote, the prone position, which we learned from the Derek Chauvin trial, which they're not supposed to do. Which they're not supposed to do. They were too busy wiping blood off of their hands and body than to call for paramedics and call for assistance for this man. But the worst case about that is that they lied. The police officers, 5 of them, I believe, lied not only to the medical examiner, but to the family. And then the state police covered up the lie because they knew it was a lie. And they did so for 2 years. 2 years. They said that he died on impact because of the high-speed chase and he hit a tree. There was no front-end damage to his car. There was no front or side damage to his car. The damage to his car was on the back left driver's side quarter panel and the front right bumper where the police officer ran his car into his car. That was it. No airbags were deployed. So, if you're going to die on impact, don't you need some airbags? Don't you need some shattering of the front window glass? Don't you need some damage to the car and to yourself to be able to do that? But we didn't have that. So I'm excited tonight. I'm excited because of my guest I have. I'm not excited because of the topic we're talking about, because clearly the topic is abhorrent, and I have to go back to that thing. I just want to slap the hell out of somebody. Just knock them out, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense. 2 years you lied to these people. You lied to the family, and lying to your supervisors, if you lied to them or told them the truth, it's caught on radio what you said you did. So the transmission is going all through the department. You hear it on the radio. And then you say it was an accident. Joining me tonight from the Louisiana State House floor, I'm so grateful that he's able to do that and still be able to do it. So there's going to be some background noise for you guys that are listening because they are debating the bill right now. But he's joining us from the floor. And if at some point that if he may have to leave or step away, then we'll have one of his colleagues to join us and discuss the issues with us. But joining us from the Louisiana State House while he's in session is Baton Rouge State Representative Ted James. Representative James is a member of the National Urban League. He is also was the vice president of the Kamala Harris Advisory Committee when she was running for president. He was her representative there in Louisiana and the South. And so I want to welcome Representative James to the show, and it looks like one of his colleagues.
Yes.
Or just got up and as I was introducing him.
He did.
Tell me your name and what area you represent, and we'll talk to you until Representative James can get back. And because you guys are debating some big issues on the floor, he told me. So I'm grateful that he was able to take still join us and not cancel out on us and still join us. So tell me your name and tell our audience your name. And what area you represent.
No problem. My name is Edmund Jordan. I'm a state representative here in Baton Rouge with Representative James as well. and I represent House District 29. So Representative James, you may be able to hear him in the background. He's actually on the floor on the bill right now, so he did have to step away. But I certainly can answer any questions that you have related to Ronald Green in that matter.
Well, that's perfect. I just want to make sure that my guests know who you are. Black Politics Today, Representative Ted and I go back a while when we spoke on the panel back for the Urban League a few years ago, and he's been a great help for Black Politics Today and been a part of us, part of our source, so that we're sitting here welcoming him. So we'll represent you again, or thank you again. Talk to him about what you're doing. That's arguing on the floor right now. They're Representative James.
So, Representative James, we're talking about a bill. They're trying to do a bill that's cloaked in I guess, doing honor to the Holocaust, but it's one of these bills that deals with history and trying to, I guess, divert history or recreate what the history actually is. So nobody denies that the Holocaust happened, and we certainly all support let me say it like this: we all have sympathy for the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. So that's not the issue. We're not trying to conflate these issues, but we do have some members here that are trying to cloak themselves around Israel and certainly have some different intentions. So he's on the floor putting some amendments on the bill that deals with the Middle Passage in Africa and African American history as well. So that's some of the things he's doing right now.
Sounds great. So now the issue with Ronald Green is that for 2 years, Louisianians and surely because no one else in America knew about the case of the issue, were told a lot and told that he had died as a car accident, as a result of a car accident. What has transpired since this video came out, and what's the posture of the state legislature as well as the Louisiana State Police?
Well, I mean, as you said, they initially told the family that he died as a result of hitting a tree. We, as certain members of the caucus, were able to see portions of the video last year. Since the video has come out, I mean, we have even more questions. We have some of our colleagues that are just appalled by the cover-up. And part of the thing is, because they were wearing body cameras, how could they be so bold as to lie about what happened, knowing that someday that the video may come out? And to me, it shows that they were so bold that they thought that the video would never come out, and probably because they had done something like this before, and it had never made the light of day. But as a legislature, what we're doing from a policy perspective, we had a committee on police reform that we did for about 3 or 4 months last year. We've got several bills that have come out. Representative James is doing a bill that's dealing with the Police Officers' Bill of Rights and doing some reform to that. I'm carrying a bill that would end qualified immunity here in Louisiana. We have Senator Cleo Fields that has a bill that deals with banning chokeholds, no-knock warrants, putting limitations on it, as well as having some procedures for body and dash cams, and as well as having a requirement for officers to have a duty to intervene. So all of those things are coming out, not just as a result of Ronald Green, but as the task force that we put in place last year.
And you spoke to something that just is mind-boggling to me, is the fact that you have to know that something can come out. But as you also said, the only reason you're not worried is because you've done it before, and you've already said that information is never going to be right of it. Because clearly something else has happened in the past that hasn't been seen. Are there efforts to subpoena records in the past to find out if and what is out there, given the fact that they're so brazen in their lies?
Well, we haven't done that yet, but that's something that we have discussed, and it's certainly on the table. So, look, right now, some of the questions that are coming out, we have 3 of these officers, I think 3, that are still in uniform and on the force. One has been terminated. One was subject to termination, but tragically died the day that he received his notice. And so, but we have some other folks that are still there. And so we have some questions as to if they played a role in a cover up at all. And if they saw this report knowing that it was inaccurate and didn't step up and say anything, then what's going to be the punishment for them? So that's some, that's the immediate question that we're asking right now. But I'm sure we're going to have some other questions related to subpoenas as we move forward.
And I'm sorry, Representative, tell me your name again.
Edmund Jordan.
Edmund Jordan. Representative Jordan. So when you think about, I mean, if there's other cases out there, and the clearly there's other folks that I guess have probably died or been arrested and beat. What's the Attorney General? The Attorney General taking any?
No, as far as we know, the Attorney General hasn't taken any action in regards to this matter at all. The local district attorney received the file initially, but then he forwarded it over to the United States Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District. And so the Western District, is my understanding, is still reviewing this case, and so there is a potential for charges to be filed against those other officers as well.
I sure hope it does come, because you were not privy to my opening, but I in essence was to our viewers and our guests that the slave patrols was the impetus of what we have right now in terms of police departments and police officers and what they do. And I do, however, believe the reality they have no concern for because I understand it, only one officer was disciplined for 1 week, I think 50 hours, that he was disciplined, and no one else has had any issues whatsoever, and they're still continuing. How does that translate to the public of what Black men's rights are in Louisiana?
Well, it doesn't translate very well, I can tell you. And you talk about the slave patrols. I mean, look, Louisiana and Oregon, up until 2017, 2018, Louisiana and Oregon were the only two states that had non-unanimous juries, which meant that we could be convicted of felonies by a 10-2 jury. And prior to 1974, it could have been by a 9-3 jury. But if you know the history of that came out of Reconstruction. And when the enslaved people, African Americans, were freed, they wanted to basically nullify our voices within the jury pool. So we had unanimous juries prior to Reconstruction. The Reconstruction happened, we went to non-unanimous juries, and that stayed for over 100 years, basically. And so this is, again, this is systematic processes and racism in place. And so we got to be very aware of that. And if you're living Black in the United States, not just Louisiana, right, but in the United States as well, if you're not aware of some of your history and some of the mechanisms that are working and forces working against you, then you need to educate yourself.
So the lie that was perpetrated, you said if you were able to find out and see some of the video, when were they privy to it so that they could actually
Well, it's my understanding, and I'm having no trouble hearing you with the background, but it's my understanding that the coroner or one of the doctors in Monroe initially put this together and informed the family that what they were being told just didn't add up from the injuries that he saw. And then from that, we had some video leak from Officer Hollingsworth, which is the officer that passed away. And, that was the video of him saying, well, I beat the F out of the guy. And then once that dropped, there were questions by the Black Caucus and others to release the video or at least have a viewing of the video. And so several members of the caucus, as well as the family and their attorneys, Lee Merritt and some others, were able to watch the video last year, but it was not released at that time for whatever reason. And now, as this drip of videos started a couple of weeks ago, they made the determination just to go ahead and release everything Friday.
Look, I respect Representative. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hopefully not there. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So talk to me about some of the legislation that you guys are going to be dealing with coming up. You talked about qualified immunity and dealing with chokeholds. I'm sure that the GOP, the Republicans, are trying to push back on that. But what are you putting any limitations on qualified immunity? Or are you pushing it solely as a point of being allowing officers directly as well as the department?
You broke up again on me a little bit, but what I will tell you is this: we have about 4 or 5 different bills that deal with 18 different recommendations that came out of the task force, and we're getting some pushback on some of it. But all the bills now have made it from the ones that initiated on the House side are now over in the Senate. And the one bill that was initiated in the Senate is now on the House side and on the floor. So all the bills have about 1, maybe 2 processes left before they get to the governor's desk, and so we're trying to get them all passed. I'm not going to tell you they're going to all get there, but we're certainly hopeful and optimistic that they will. And I think once they get to the governor's desk, they'll all be signed into law. I feel confident.
I'm excited to hear that they got out of the House and they were able to pass and get over to the Senate. Thinking about bills that are doing that, how will those bills transform law enforcement in Louisiana?
Well, look, I think they're going to transform them in a major way, because if that actually happens, one of the bills deals with the post revocation, and part of the issue you have on these with these cases, somebody could get fired or laid off from one department or allowed to resign, and but they keep their post certification, and they can go to the department right next door, right down the street, and become an officer with them. Well, if that post certification is revoked, then you can't operate as a police officer anywhere in the state. So I think that's going to be huge. As it relates to the police officers' Bill of Rights, we're talking about reducing the time that they have in order to get their story together before they have to come in and give a statement. So as we reduce that time, I think that makes it very, very good for us. The qualified immunity, I mean, that's a huge one in of itself, because if you take that defense away, I think officers are going to have to think twice before they start violating citizens' constitutional rights. And so if we have all those things going on, I think it's going to be a major transformation within police policies and police interactions with citizens here in the state. So we're very hopeful, we're very positive, and if all of them pass, you won't see changes immediately, but I think in the next few years, you'll see a major transformation.
And do any of the bills have anything to do with whether or not a convicted officer or one who lose their full certification are still able to receive their retirement and their pension?
No, so we don't have that one on deck right now. Now there may be an amendment that gets on that tackles that. I will tell you that was part of what was discussed in the task force, but you got to remember, and if you don't know, the task force was made up of several different groups that crossed the spectrum. So we had some in law enforcement, we had some community groups, we had the Urban League, we had the Louisiana Sheriff's Association, Louisiana District Attorneys Association. So all of these bills were compromises that came out of that. I mean, we had some that wanted to go much further. For instance, like on qualified immunity, we had some that wanted to go much further than what my bill currently has. In fact, I wanted to go further, but as a compromise, we are where we are with it. And so a lot of these bills, that's an issue. People talked about the retirement and touching the retirement, but that was one. I think if we had pushed very hard on that, we may not have come out of the committee with it.
Yeah, I'm sure those are going to be the ones that we have to deal with. So what is the perception and idea of the state police having covered this up for 2 years? And is the state, is the chief of police or the chief of the state police still in his position, or the deputies?
Well, it would be the colonel. No, the colonel is no longer there. So he's retired. Was allowed to retire. It was a retirement. They said that was planned already prior to any of this information getting out. But he the current the one that was in place that is gone now. Some of the officers are still there, but again, you never know. The U.S. Attorney's Office can still bring charges.
So did the person to take over, was that what his deputy or some of the lower brass that was still in the same hierarchy, or was that a newly appointed colonel?
Well, he was a newly appointed colonel, but he was currently employed with Louisiana State Police. Mm-hmm. But he was not part of the command staff or anything like that. So he was not necessarily part of that group, but he was somebody currently on staff.
So how do you guys now deal with the credibility of the state police, given the fact that this was covered up for 2 years, allowed to be covered up for 2 years by the brass, and the fact that they were so brazenly lying about it that other officers and none of the 5 that were there came out and said anything about it?
Well,
credibility.
Let me say this. To go back to your other question, people were appalled by just the mere fact that it was covered up and it was so blatantly covered up. So as it relates to the credibility, people certainly have trust issues with Louisiana State Police right now, because for so long we held them up as the gold standard of policing here in Louisiana. And so that myth was shattered entirely. And so now there's a process of trying to rebuild trust, and I think the current colonel, I think he's doing a good job. He's not doing a perfect job. I can tell you there are things that we think that he needs to improve on as well, but he's doing a pretty good job. He's making sure that they're being held accountable, and I can give him credit for that. He's making sure his officers are being held accountable now, and I don't foresee this happening on his watch. I would certainly hope that it would.
And what about the morale of Black police officers on the I mean, I don't know the demographics of how many Black officers you have on the given the fact of what they see and what they've had to deal with. How is that translating into their ability to trust their fellow officers, and just the fact that they are working in the state police now as a credibility issue?
I would tell you that the numbers are not commensurate with the population of the state. So those numbers within state police of African American officers certainly needs to be improved. As to the morality of the officers, I think that's probably a question better asked for them. I'm not sure, even when we talk to them, if they're giving us the full extent of what they're dealing with. So I don't want to speculate or comment on that. But I can imagine. Look, when they take the uniform off, they're African American as well, and I'm sure they're well aware of that. So I'm sure I would think it'd be impossible to think that they wouldn't have some issues going on. But specifically, I don't know of any of the specifics right now that I could comment on.
So what was your feeling, and what was the caucus's feeling when this all came out in terms of what you need to do? Because I'm sure across the country after George Floyd, so many state legislatures were trying to introduce legislation to deal with qualified immunity, chokeholds, and things of that nature. Were you guys already in the process of doing that, or did this come up now as a result of Ronald Green?
We were already in the process of doing it. So I'm sorry, we just voted. So we were already in the process of doing this before the Ronald Green matter came to our attention. So something in place. Our initial bill I ran last June related to qualified immunity, and Senator Fields had already gotten the task force approved prior to that. So it was something that we didn't have any idea of at the time, but really the timing couldn't have been better.
And how many Democrats do you guys have in your state legislature right now?
So we have about 31 right now I'm sorry about that. We have about 36 on the House side, and on the Senate side we have about 9.
Okay.
and that's approximate out of 39 on that side and out of 105 here on the House side. So we're still in the minority, but we do have a group of moderate Republicans that sometimes will vote with us on some of these issues. And the good thing is on budget issues you need 70 votes. So when all of us stick together, we do have enough to sort of block some of these budget issues that are bad budget policies for us.
How do you guys? Personally, just that frustrates me so much. The lopsidedness of state legislatures like yours, and Kentucky and Pennsylvania and Michigan and all these states where I believe that they've been in the minority for so long that how do you guys deal with that from the standpoint of just actually trying to legislate for your district?
Well, I can tell you next year is going to be a huge opportunity for us because Louisiana, like all the other states, are probably going to be going through redistricting next year. And so, with us having the population by percentage, I think we're second or third in the country. I think South Carolina's one, and Louisiana and Mississippi are right there as far as percentage of African Americans in the state.
Right.
So we do have an opportunity to increase our districts, but I think it's a two-way street. Part of that is we have to be very, very strategic in what we're doing, but at the same time, these districts of having 90% African Americans in the district, we have to get away from that as well. So I think if we do that, it's definitely not going to put us anywhere near a majority, but it'll help balance out the numbers. And but you have to work with your colleagues and do the best you can. But I would tell you, we've been called the conscience of the legislature, the legislative Black Caucus here. And I think that's true. I think we bring bills that make people think and make people question where their hearts are and where their minds are. And so I think as long as we continue to bring bills like that, we'll continue to be successful.
Are you guys having any election bills come up? Or are you having any issues with that, with early voting and and the drop boxes and trying to eliminate and block more African Americans from being able to vote?
We are, but I will tell you, our bills probably aren't as bad as Georgia and some of the other bills that you're hearing about. But we still are fighting that big lie of election fraud, and some people are trying to perpetrate that lie here as well. But it hasn't been as big as I would say as it seems to be in other states.
So is anybody pushing back on that, saying that if it was a lie, why did the Republicans win in the state house?
We're doing it all the time, and in fact, Representative James is one of them that says, "Well, look, I mean, Trump won the state, so are you saying there was some fraud there? Or,
Right.
We only have one statewide Democratic elected official here, and that's the governor.
Right.
So in all these other races, are you saying that your race was one fraudulent? So I mean, I see you laughing. Look, it can be comical at times, and sometimes you have to laugh, not to cry. But
You have to, man. You have to. I mean, that's. I mean, it's my passion and heart to see just dumb stuff like that happening. But then, like, to be like in your position and Representative James's position of having to try to negotiate and plan with these schools because they want to just hold on to the lie to make it even worse. I mean, 39-9 in the Senate, right?
That's right.
76 to 35 in
No,
House.
if you count to 105, whatever it is, whatever those numbers come out to.
So what the heck are you trying to do except just eliminate us altogether? How's the motivation in the community for Black folks to really get engaged and keep trying and keep pushing, even though they know they're in a minority?
I will tell you this, in Baton Rouge, especially where we are, we've had a very engaged electorate. So I can tell you from 2016 when we had the Alton Sterling matter, we've had other matters as well. But what I would tell you, we've been most proud of taking tragedy and creating it and turning it into policy. We weren't the only city to convert a tragedy like that into policy, but we were certainly one of the first to do that. And we kept our protest engaged, but not violent. We didn't burn anything down here in Baton Rouge, and I would tell you, I think that's a testament to the community leaders, not really just the elected officials. I mean, we have lots of leaders within the community that are non-elected but are heavily engaged and in touch with our community and have their fingers on the pulse. So I think we're doing a pretty good job with that. In Louisiana, we seem to make noise whenever things happen. So we're getting, but that doesn't mean that we're certainly not perfect. We have a lot of improvement to do. But I will tell you, the Baton Rouge community, the New Orleans community, South Louisiana, we've been pretty engaged.
And before Representative James comes back, what's going to be the process for the redistricting? Or is it going to be the state legislature? Or do you guys have an outside committee doing that?
No, state legislature does it. We should start. I was told that we're going to start looking at that in February, and we'll probably have a special session in February of 2022 to deal with the redistricting. So, but we're putting plans in place right now. So we're certainly not waiting until February to get that going. So I'm not sure. I think you may have Representative James. I think he's back.
Okay.
So
well, Representative Edmund Jordan, I want to thank you, my brother. I'll be calling you next time because I'll get you on the show to talk to us.
Anytime. I'll be. Look, I'll be a substitute or the original. You tell me what you want me to be. Either way.
All right, my brother. Thank you. And right now we'll bring in Representative James and get his opinion.
What's up, brother?
Because he's up on the floor talking, passing amendments, and introducing things. So we want to get him in here right now and get his take and everything. Ted, my brother, what's going on, man?
I'm good, man. Good to see you, man. I apologize, brother, but Representative Jordan, he's made a living litigating against police, so he was right on time with it, man. We fight some craziness. We got a bill that one of my colleagues wants to teach the Holocaust, but they just rejected my amendment to teach significant things about Black history. So we were rolling.
Oh, you mean they don't want the 1619 to come out?
No, man, no. Yeah.
Come on, man. Isn't that crazy? I mean, they want to change history the way it is because they were like, oh, we don't want to teach that. We're going to take your funding away. You can't teach 1619. We don't like that.
That's right. Look, I had a list. I had Fred Hampton, C.J. Wall. They didn't want to hear any of it.
That's crazy, man. So talk to me. I talked to Representative Jordan about Ronald. Talk to me about your opinions and what you think about what's going on, and just how is it just working in the atmosphere and what's happening with you?
I'll tell you, we now, since I've talked to you, I'm now the chair of the Black Caucus. So it is,
congratulations, my brother.
The issues are just, insurmountable in that, I don't know what Representative Jordan talked about, but we were able to see this video last year. So I knew that once the general public saw it, that there would be a huge uproar. And my biggest challenge is that, we have one of these guys, the main offender, he killed himself.
Right.
But we have the other two, one of them had a
very small. Let me interrupt and tell you, thank you for telling the truth. This idea that he just had an accident.
No, he killed himself. Yeah, he killed himself.
He knew it was coming, and he wanted to get rid of it. So he just wanted to kill it.
Yeah, and that it just underscores what we already knew, the type of coward that he is. And I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I'm gonna speak on this guy.
Just speak the truth. Let me do it for you. Let me do it for you.
There you go.
Yeah, he was a coward. He was a chump and a punk. Okay.
That's right. And the former colonel of state police, his whole career was spent in the same troop where we know all of these issues are happening. And my concern is now, of course, we have a Black superintendent, and now we have 3 of the 4 lieutenant colonels are African American. But we still have so many unanswered questions about this incident, right? Because something this grave doesn't go without people at the top making sure that it was buried. Because the DA in this case actually told us that he didn't get the file until 8 months after the accident. So that is problematic in and of itself. And now we found out just today that another trooper, that's a lieutenant, he arrived on the scene and he just gave up his body camera footage within the last few weeks. So the feds have his body camera footage, but the state, and how does that happen? How do you withhold body camera footage? And I hate to this brother Davis, who's the new colonel, you know, man, heavy is the head that wears the crown, because now, you know, this stuff was in before, the culture was bad before, but we expecting you to move
Right.
with all deliberate speed
Right.
to make sure that it's corrected.
I mean, what authority does he have to, like the chief of police in Minneapolis, of just being able to fire these cops because they violated policy? I
Most
mean,
definitely, he could fire them, but
they committed
yeah,
a criminal offense.
they have a state police commission that gives them. It's similar to our Bill of Rights, so you can fire them, and of course they can go to the commission to be reinstated. And I told them, hey, you fire them. And you make them come to that commission and fight for their job, because the commission is appointed by the governor, and the governor, who's a Democrat, you know, he's taking a lot of hits right now. He's my friend. People criticizing me for being friends with him, but the commission is appointed by him. So if you haven't appointed people to the commission that's gonna make sure these officers are not patrolling the streets, then that's shame on you, right? So fire them and let them go back to the commission, and then you put it out there what they did, and show that they don't deserve to be shielded from liability.
Exactly, and that was the thing I was talking to Representative Jordan about, is the idea of being able to the qualified immunity, hold them accountable, not just allowing them to sue the department, but sue them personally. And he said that they took out the piece about denying them their retirement because it got too controversial.
Yeah.
But if you were to do that, that gives them a second reason to think about something before they do.
You know, that's what we have to do, right? That is, and Representative Jordan is indeed right. You know, we are in the minority. I heard him telling you the numbers. So, you know, sometimes we have to, you know, take out some things to make sure we get it, and take small bites at the apple. But that's the one that is going to cause you to think, because at that point, that's why Hollingsworth killed himself, because he wanted to kill himself before he was fired, to make sure his family was protected, right? Yeah. To make sure his wife and his kids, and, you know, and I understand that. But that piece to Representative Jordan's bill was a huge concession that we had to make to get the bill out. I don't know if he told you, but the bill only it received the bare minimum of votes to get on to the Senate side.
Okay. Well, he didn't tell me the number of votes, but he did say some of them
53 votes,
and they're at the Senate side now. And now it's just a matter of trying to get those, I think it's 8 bills out of the Senate. Right. If you can get them out, you know you'll get the governor to sign them. It's just a matter of getting them out of the Senate side. But the disparity on the Senate side, 39-9.
That's right.
And how many votes you need to have? What, 23?
21.
21. Mm-hmm. 21. I mean, you got to have, you know, 12, 13, you know.
You got to have some brave Republicans over there.
I mean, how you guys, who's whipping and who's going to be doing that to try to get those 13 Republicans to come over?
Yeah, so Senator Fields, who his legislation created the task force, he's been working, and I think honestly, with this stuff coming out with state police, this is basically the motivation that they need to get this stuff done. So if they are getting pushback now, and you know, we had some issues from some of the rank and file officers with the qualified immunity piece, but what's going on with state police is basically that is the cover that they need to vote for these bills.
Yeah, and I would hope that this, as well as even the other incident that's come out, will move the U.S. Senate and your South Carolina brother to get off this idea that qualified immunity should not be touched, that we should just be able to sue the department. But you can sue the department now. In most cases, you can sue the department now. In some cases, you can't.
That's right.
But just saying you can sue the department does not hold the officer accountable for his actions.
Yeah, it holds taxpayers. That you and I got to pay for that.
Right.
You know, that puts it right back into the hands of the people that are being abused. Right, you know, the folks that are being abused by the police officers, then they have to pay to settle the lawsuits. Like that's not, you know, it's putting it right back into the hands of the people that have been mistreated the most.
And that shouldn't be. Talk to me about some of the legislation that you're trying to push through and pass, and what does it mean for Baton Rouge and Louisiana as a whole?
Yeah, so one of the bills, it requires a mechanism for the post certification to be revoked. Right now, just with this officer, we have officers right now in Baton Rouge that are in our narcotics division that have been planting evidence, stealing drugs, and some of those officers they quit before they were fired, so they can still go and technically be police officers in other areas of the state because they haven't been convicted of anything yet. Current law that I passed in 2017 after Alton Sterling basically said that an officer had to be convicted before he could lose their post. So this bill sets up different criteria. So if you have multiple use of force infractions, use of force infractions, if you have all these different issues, then your chief of police or superintendent can report you to the law enforcement commission in Louisiana, and they could revoke your post. So you can't just hop from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, from New Orleans to Shreveport, and continue to beat up black and brown people under the cover of their badge. We also have another bill with our law enforcement bill of rights that's making sure that sustained officer complaints stay on that officer's on his profile and stays on his personnel record. So that one is huge. I think I needed 53 votes. Only got 56 on that one. So that one is in the Senate. We're trying to make sure that we also reduce the amount of time that they have to find a lawyer. Under current law, police officers wait 30 days. They don't have to speak. They don't have to say a word for 30 days until they get counsel. There are lawyers on every corner in Baton Rouge. There are lawyers all over New Orleans, all over the state. So we're trying to reduce the amount of days that they can evade questioning. And then, of course, we had a bill that will prevent the use of chokeholds and the use of no-knock warrants. So that one is now on the House floor near final passage.
And what about being able to, like, even if they quit, or try to advance circumvent the process, but they can still be held accountable. So if they decide to quit, everything is held up until the process is completed before they can go to another agency, or before they can collect their retirement, or before they can do anything. Have you thought about that kind of amendment?
So that piece is included in the bill that helps them revoke posts, right? Okay. So there's a mechanism for that there. But the retirement piece, like Representative Jordan said, that one is a very slippery slope, because technically you can go in and resign tomorrow and you can start the process to get that retirement, because under current Louisiana law, the only way you can lose your retirement is if you are convicted of a crime that was a part of your job. And of course, we don't get these officers don't get arrested to the point we're never gonna get convictions because they don't get arrested. So that is something that we're gonna look at.
Can you delay it? Can you do something where it's delayed, not necessarily denied, so that the process can take its place, so that they don't then quit, then collect their pension, and then you find out 2 years later, 6 months later, they was wrong and they should have been convicted, but now it's done with. They got it. They used it to make their defense.
Yeah, I think that those issues were brought up after the retirement piece was removed out of his bill, and this is what's called a fiscal session in Louisiana. So we're only limited to 5 non-money bills. So it was too late in the process to file something else. But I know that this is going to be one of the issues that we look at moving forward. One of our Black Caucus members is actually the chair of the Senate Retirement Committee, so he's been committed to really look at that issue, because you hit me. That gets to the crux of it.
Well, I asked Representative Jordan. Let me ask you before we get out of here. What's the atmosphere and how does it make especially Black men in Louisiana feel when you look at the state police lying for 2 years and covering everything up? It basically gives you no ability to trust any cop anywhere, even if he's Black sometimes, because he's under that pressure from that same department, especially given the numbers of Black to white, where he's worried about his job or his family, so he's gonna stay silent too. How does that make Black men feel, or Black folks in general in Louisiana feel, that they can't trust the police?
That is an issue, right? I've been talking to brothers for the last 4 or 5 days after these videos have gone public, and we called for a new colonel of state police. We gave the governor a list of 4 Black troopers, and we pick one, right? But we also know that just because he picked one, that it doesn't negate the fear that's out there in the community. And I told that brother, I was like, look, man, don't fall on the sword for the actions of your predecessor, but you need to go in there and make some things happen pretty quickly. Now, there have been some policy things that we like. There have been some personnel moves that we like. But for me, I'll tell you, and what I try to tell the community, negating all of the issues that are there. I feel like there's so many bodies buried at state police
Right.
that the colonel hadn't been there long enough to even know the names, right? He is so much, it's been so ingrained that there's a part of me that wants to say, hey, get a brother time. But there's also things like when I hear about this guy that was only given like 50 hours discipline,
Right.
that this guy is still patrolling, you know, Colonel, look, man, like you would not be there but for us. So you owe it to us to make some of these things, make these corrections. And then here in Baton Rouge, like my chief of police is a former state police trooper, and he has come in and he's fired cops. Folks have been arrested, folks are getting indicted, and the unions are coming after him, but he is not afraid at all. Like this brother is like, come for me, because I got the law and the truth on my side. So, you know, here in Baton Rouge, people know and see the actions of the chief. We had an incident a couple of weeks ago where an officer, it appeared that an officer had his knee on the neck of a kid. And of course, it was an uproar, but it wasn't like normal times when folks took to the street, because they say, you know what, we know Chief Paul, and Chief Paul is going to come in and handle this. And it wasn't a 30-week investigation. It wasn't a 3-week investigation. In a couple of days, it was handled swiftly. So here we're seeing some changes regarding just the trust in the system, only because we have a chief that is so willing to go against the grain. But he is in the minority, of course.
And I mean, that's really what you need across the country. We got to have these police, because I mean, it's not going to stop. As I said in my opening, it's not going to stop. They think they're the slave patrol, and they come with impunity, and they don't have any fear. And like Representative Jordan said, clearly this happened before, even though they had a body cam on, even though they broadcasted it on the radio live, right? They clearly knew that it was going to be okay. I mean, you broadcast that over every system so every cop could hear it, even if you're on Channel 3, because, you know, when we go on the radio, we say, okay, go to TAC 3, right? So the cop that you talk to, he's going to turn to Channel 3. Everybody else is going to turn to Channel 3 too, right? And they're going to listen to what you're saying. So it's already there and it's recorded. But the brazenness of it is that you don't care. You're still going to do that on camera and on the radio, and do it with like, hey, yeah, we beat his ass, ha ha ha. Yeah, we got the blood on him. We beat him to a pulp, ha ha ha.
And then even in one of them, one of the troopers said, "Hey man, is this on body camera?" And he cut it off. That in and of itself, automatic termination. Automatic termination. If you purposefully cut off that body cam, that dash cam, automatic termination. It should be just like when you driving and you don't submit to that breathalyzer, you automatically lose your license. Period.
Right. But yet they're still on the force.
That's right. Well, one of them is. One of them has been fired.
Okay, so we got to put some pressure on them, man. We got to put some pressure on. What's at stake for us, Representative James? What do we have to look forward to? What do we got to look at? We got the 2022 coming up. We got this coming up. We got this. You know, the families are dealing with this. What's in the graveyard that we haven't seen yet or coming out? What's at stake for us?
You know, I tell you, it's I always talk about it's life and death, right? We have 2022. We got these Senate races right now. We have the George Floyd Policing Act stuck in the Senate. We got to make sure that we continue to put folks in the Senate that are going to support these issues. Locally, we got to make sure that we're getting, if your police chief is appointed, then you got to get a mayor that's going to appoint somebody that's going to be, sympathetic to our issues. And if he's elected, we got to get out there and make sure we get somebody in. So one of the problems is we have so many different stories. It seems like we couldn't even celebrate the verdict in the Chauvin trial. Right. Then there's something else. There's another body. Right, like right here in Louisiana, because we're talking about Ronald Green, but there's another guy, Aaron Bowman, that was beaten by the same troop just a few weeks after. So we hadn't even talked about him yet because the family hadn't seen the footage. But that's next for us. We're going to make sure that the governor allows that family to see the footage. And then the other problem is right now with prescription laws, technically you have to file a lawsuit within a year. But if the state police is lying for 2 years and saying that your kid or your brother, your husband died in a car accident and you don't get the truth for another year, and then the state is going to go and try to get the lawsuit thrown out because of prescription, we got to make sure that we look at the prescriptive periods in these 1983 cases.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. You know, and it's the lawyers are out there, so now we're gonna be looking in the budget to try to make sure we could get a settlement to these families. Like that's next.
Well, my brother, I wish you all the best. Please come back and let us know how that goes and what we need to do and how we can help and support by putting it out there and blasting it out. I'm grateful to you and appreciative that you were willing to come on the house floor and still hold your commitment to us to tell us what's going on and talk to us and help us understand exactly what's going on in Louisiana. Because I definitely appreciate it, and certainly we want to lift you up and support you in any way we can because you're doing some good work.
Look, brother, I appreciate you as always. Thank you. We're gonna be doing some good things. And again, I apologize, couldn't be more quiet, but we got some stuff that's happening here, and we got to stay on the battlefield.
Well, I hope our listeners understand the importance of it and deal with the talk around and background noise and everything else. Yeah. We can still hear you, and it was still good stuff. So I appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Take care of yourself.
Always good to see you.
All right.
Thank you, Doc.
That's my man, Representative Ted James, right there in Louisiana. And of course, man, I mean, just to realize that the same people who just got exposed on the last tape with Ronald Green just beat somebody else 2 weeks ago. I mean, this is crazy. We cannot keep allowing this to happen and sit back and say nothing and do nothing. Now, yeah, we got to march about it. We got to do all that. But every state, especially Louisiana and all these states where Republicans outnumber Democrats by huge numbers, everybody in there that's a Democrat or independent that leans Democrat, you have to register and you have to vote. You have to keep doing it, because what's going to happen is that those other people are going to die out and move out and things are going to happen, but you got to keep doing it. As you always know, like I think Representative Jordan said, there is a large Black population. So even with the redistricting that they're doing, they're going to have to include some of those swaths of Black folks in those districts. Now, they may only include maybe 10 or 15%. But if you got another 10 or 15% of white folks, that could be 40%, 10, 15, or 30%. Maybe you can edge out. If you get a couple of independents, now you're talking about, hey, almost 40% of the population in that district. But you got to get that 40% to turn out to vote. Because what happens is you usually only get about 40% total to vote. Except for presidential election, then you might get 48. Very rarely do you get over 50%. I mean, I'm looking at places where literally there's 50,000 people in a council district, 8,000 people vote, or 7,000 people. 7 or 8,000 out of 50. That's stupid. That's crazy. That's allowing allowing your rights just to be trampled on, your interests to be negated and never even thought of. So even when you don't win in those elections, you have to keep voting and keep registering and keep growing, because ultimately you'll get there. That's what happened in Georgia. That's why they were able to win in Georgia. That's what happened in Arizona. That's why they're able to win in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Now it has to happen in Louisiana, in Florida, in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in Mississippi, in Alabama. It's got to start happening in Texas. I mean, even in Texas, slowly but surely, it's going to get purple. It might get blue, but whatever the case may be, we have to keep fighting for it. We can't give up, because right now, the stakes are huge. The stakes are huge. It's like we have to make sure that we take care of ours, because with redistricting and gentrification and gerrymandering, you can believe that in many states, in fact, all of them where Republicans are in control, they're going to do everything they can so they can take back the House, take back the state legislature, or keep the state legislature for another 10 years, take back the House for another 10 years, and just think about what will happen over the next 10 years. The same thing that happened over the previous 10 years when Obama was in office, and we lost all those states. We lost the House, we lost the Senate, and the courts. We lost all of that. So think about it. Vote in your local elections for your district attorney, for your county sheriffs, for your judges, for your what are they called? Circuit court clerks, all those folks. Every last one of those positions are important. Every last one of them. So don't sit back. Don't think about it. Doesn't matter. Don't think that they're going to do what they want to do, because they certainly are when you let them. When you let them do it, why not do it? If they let you do it, wouldn't you do it? Or are you so consciously aware that you say, oh no, I will always do the right thing? Well, if that's the case, then do the right thing. Get your behind out there and vote. Until next week, if it's social, economic, or political, it's Black Politics Today. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you for standing by us and keeping with us, even though we were out on sabbatical and going back. But we appreciate you hanging in there and joining us and being a part of Black Politics Today. Thanks so much. Good night.
Thank you for listening to Black Politics Today on I-4